Chapter 24. Seer roared as he sprang onto the back of the first Bortrak, who was dragging a woman by her hair into its ship. Using his claws, he sliced its throat. His hypersenses picked up the sound of its gurgling blood before it pitched forward. He leapt off it and pulled the beast off the woman. She wept beneath it, one side of her face bruised and swollen. No time for sympathy. Kill the Bortraks. Get to the command deck. Run, he growled. The woman stumbled to her feet and brushed by him, sobbing into her hands as she ran past. Glancing up, he caught sight of Bortraks simply knocking females over, likely searching for a female of their preference. On the far side of the bay, at least a dozen Bortraks were dragging screaming women toward the same docking bay door. They must have already docked a transportation ship with our own. The implications were horrifying. He moved down the hall like an animal on the hunt. His blade sliced through Bortraks faster than he'd ever killed with his blade in the war. Everything seemed to slow down around him, and he felt his battle instincts sharpen. He felt himself slipping away even more. Blood and carnage trailed his every step. Shocked females stared at him with horror in their eyes. He leaped, ran, moved with agility through them all. Some of the Bortraks tried to fight back, but he was faster. And none of them expected that they faced something like him. When the last Bortrak's lifeless body tumbled from his claws, its blood sliding down his hands and arms, he realized he was at the docking bay of the Bortrak ship. He heard a roaring behind him and turned. More Bortraks than he could count were in the transport vessel, as well as their captive females. They formed a line in front of the women, grabbing weapons and charging. Too many. He stepped back, stumbling over a dead Bortrak. Then he heard a roar to his right. Another door was being pried open. A second later, spiritus males poured in. Most were not warriors, but he instantly recognized the few that were. Taking a deep breath, he curled his nails and roared. The answering roar was deafening. Some of the spiritus men had partially shifted. The warriors. But the other males were no match for the Bortraks. They battled with blades, the panic in their eyes mirroring the fear in the women's eyes. He briefly glimpsed two of them using the injectors. Leader. He glanced around but didn't see his friend. One woman screamed in front of him as a Bortrak gripped her hair, his arm pulled back, ready to strike. Her face looked so much like his Kaci's. Delicate, fragile, desperate for his help. His vision went red. A coppery scent filled his nostrils. Hot blood splattered his body. A roar tore from his lips like that of a mindless beast. He carved through more Bortraks than he could count, blood flying, roars filling the air.
Seer. Seer.
He spun, claws outstretched.
It's me, Gallant. Seer, it's me.
Slowly his vision returned. Gallant stood before him, his arm hanging awkwardly along his side, no doubt broken. One side of his face was bruised and sliced. You need medical attention. His voice sounded groggy, wrong, even to his own ears. His friend nodded.
We all do.
The Bortraks. He stiffened instantly, looking around. The blaring from the sirens filled his ears. The hall was a massacre of bodies. The red light only darkened the blood painting the walls. But luckily most of the bodies were those of their enemy.
You got them,
his friend said.
Pretty much all of them. We assisted as much as we could.
He turned back to Gallant and to the men who still stood, battered and injured, behind him. Some holding females in their arms. All stared at him. The mixture of both awe and terror so familiar. His stomach tensed, the battle frenzy. The being I become, just as my father before me. It's necessary, he reminded himself. His mind knew it. He rubbed his forehead, willing the memories away. But they wouldn't dissipate. He remembered every detail of the day his father had turned on a room full of his own kind, killing dozens before he was taken down. Seer had prayed never to become that. But I must take the risk. For Kaci, I'm taking back the command deck. Those who wish to join me may. Seer turned and raced back down the hall, stepping over bodies as he moved. He turned the handle to the stairwell and started up the stairs. Below him he heard the sounds of a fight. A woman's scream. He hesitated only a moment. Should I save her? No. I have to get to the command deck if I have any chance at protecting Kaci. When they reached the top floor, he paused. 6 men reached the landing a moment later, including Gallant. 3 warriors, 3 untrained males. It isn't enough, but it will have to do. His gaze held theirs. Be prepared for anything. They nodded. A woman screamed far below. His gut tightened, but he couldn't help her. None of them could, not if they hoped to save them all. He turned the handle and opened the door, knowing that this might be one mission he might not make it out of. Perhaps Leader will take over my plan then. He hoped. If not, Kaci would still be in danger. All of this would be for nothing.